Hello and welcome to Coach's Corner. This is Coach's Corner 17, March 23rd. I'm here with actually just Ian Murray this morning. Taya is running a bit late. We're hoping she'll join us here in the middle of our recording. But you've got me, Jason Flores, and Ian Murray. Ian, how's it going? I know you just got in from a run. How was it?
That was fantastic. 9 miles, right around an hour. So pretty stoked with that. It's 94% humidity here. So it was a rough one.
Oh my, it is actually raining here in California, and it is a cool 61 degrees outside. So
hey, but you could be in the Northeast right now. They're a little moist as well, except I believe it's white moisture.
A little bit of moist. You know, a lot of people really love that word moist, Ian. All right, so this is kind of what Ian and I were calling a free ride. As far as Coach's Corner today, we're going to go kind of off the cuff. We're going to be talking about a couple things happening specifically about our recovery week. Our coaches took sort of a break, but I know a lot of us are doing a lot of work with our goals. But for the endurance lab, our riders are taking kind of a week off to get ready for the next lab. So during this week, it was kind of just an open ride, letting people get back to some of their social rides or possibly jumping into a race. So hopefully we'll see after this week's of post, kind of what people had going on as we get ready for the performance lab, which we'll talk a little bit about today. But before that, let's just jump straight into this week in the lab and kind of the different things. And I know Ian had a couple things to talk about. And during this time, what do we see lab riders doing during this week without much else going on as far as structure, Ian?
No, Jason, it's actually for a lot of the folks, they were getting out, like you said, jumping in some old group rides or just trying to feel how their legs are coming around, getting a little recovery and putting in some efforts. I know we had a couple who jumped on their mountain bikes and went out and tore up the trails a little bit and had a great time. I know a lot of people had some good plans. We had Andy who was going to be racing, and it got snowed out in England, which he was pretty stoked about. And we had a couple other people who were planning on getting out and racing this weekend as well. And had quite a bit of bad weather, so I don't think it was as fun as a lot of people imagined it would be, especially for the the week before the beginning of spring, or the week of the beginning of spring. So it just is what it is. It's weather, you can't control it, but I think a lot of people were just having a good time and relaxing. And for the lab wise, one of the things we talked about it briefly with some of the lab riders, and even during these off weeks, the core workouts are important to keep going on. You don't have to do the hard weight strength workouts where you're crushing yourself and you have to pick yourself up off the floor because you're a giant puddle of goo afterwards. I mean, those are fun and I enjoy doing those. But when you're trying to get this recovery in and get a little bit of, get your body back into it, those little short 15-minute workouts like Taya's on the video and just doing some light balance and structure work. That's what's really important just to maintain, so you don't get back on the bike, you don't get back in the pool or get out running and you have these nice little twinges because your back or your back's off, your form's off, things like that.
Absolutely. I think coming off of a race that I did, I definitely just posted about it. It was a 100K race. Really didn't have any of those kind of weird, lower back twinges. So often I'd see people in the group that I was with kind of stand up and stretch and do this sort of thing. And this year, less than probably every other year with the amount of strength work that I've been working with athletes in the endurance lab, I think has really paid off. So making sure that we continue those things and really make it a part of our season, even though now that we're kind of backing off and maybe doing 1 or 2 of those workouts in a week, I think it's still important to keep going because those muscles are there. We spent that time, 16 weeks, building those things. And it sounds like you have a lot of new workouts coming, Ian, because I know I'm testing one out later today, right?
Oh yeah. So that was this is my prison yard workout. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I tested it out yesterday with some folks at work, and I don't understand why they keep doing it, but they keep showing up every Tuesday and Thursday to do my workouts.
so it's an optional thing at work? How does that work out?
Yeah. It's an optional thing. I have 2 guys from my office who go do it, and they do it because they keep trying to say that the boss is not going to break me, and I break him every week. And then I have a couple other people from other offices at work, and they show up and do it, and it's quite comical because they just complain about them, but then they come in and do it.
For a lot of you guys that don't know what Ian does, you can just picture Ian in this like really hipster slim pants, a slim white t-shirt, and a skinny tie doing these workouts. Yeah, so no. What's your normal attire for work, Ian?
It depends. So we have one day a week where I definitely wear a suit because we have different meetings.
Yeah.
And then most of the rest of the week I'm in uniform or a suit.
Awesome. All right.
Yeah.
So,
but hey, so I do have to call you out, Jason. So everyone who's been doing these lab work, the lab workouts, and wondering why we throw in these bits of surging and these hard efforts after long SSTs. Jason in his race, which he's wildly underplaying, threw down 705 watts in the last 800 meters to take his group.
Yeah, so it was kind of very like I guess to say the least, Chris Haskell, very cagey to go. During the ride, I saw a lot of surging happening, but I kept it all kind of in the bag, making sure I was just doing enough to get over every hill, making sure I was keeping myself kind of tame just to make sure I was in the draft, and I was rolling over, which is really important. I found myself kind of right in the zone as people were going up the hill. They would keep a steady pace. But you know what? And we talk about it so much. People would let off like 100 meters before the top because they can kind of see their horizon. And what I would do at that point is just give a little bit of effort right at threshold. It would bring me to the front of the group. And I would actually start resting on the downhill before even people got over, because they would actually have to put one last effort to jump over each of the little hills that we had. And it was so effective to kind of roll the hill, that little surge that I was so used to be under like around SST or even below, because sometimes your group isn't going to go SST and you're not your threshold, and you're not going to go to your threshold. You're going to ride that group, and then you're going to surge over, and then be able to get that rest as everybody kind of regroups together. Oh my gosh, it helped over and over in every single hill. So it really put a little bit in the bag for me to be able to kind of have that little bit. The group didn't all get up and sprint, at that 1,000-meter mark. A lot of people were just kind of rolling in together. They just didn't have it in their legs. I couldn't stand up, I'll tell you truthfully that. But if you know how I like to ride, I'm kind of the long sprint guy. I'm like the 1,500, 1,000-meter out, just put my hands on the bar and just throw it in the pain cave. And I was able to do that. The finish was uphill. I tried one step standing up and there was no way. So I just kept it down and as hard as I could all the way to the finish.
No, that's great. And I mean, that's one of the things we cover a lot on Skills and Drills about is positioning, saving yourself, and having that energy at the end. Because as they say, it doesn't matter how long you're on the front, it matters when you're on the front. And,
exactly.
And we try to focus a lot of our workouts in the lab that are designed to give you that end of race power.
Yeah.
And it's hard, that means a lot of these workouts we're gonna do, you're gonna blow up in. And that's one of the things kind of skipping ahead a little bit, talking in the lab, where a lot of people talked about, wow, towards the end of the lab, I couldn't hit the power target sometimes by the end of these workouts, especially in the VO2 ones. Yeah. And we responded that that's important to understand that that's okay. That's kind of designed that way. That if you're easily hitting your targets by the end of the workout in week 8, you probably need to reevaluate what your targets are, because they're a little low.
That's a good point. And I did an exercise with one of our riders, Dean, and he did the VO2 max 555. And what we did is we took and took a look at how close he did to each of the intervals. So around interval 1, interval 2, let's say there's 5 intervals, you should be about on target. Around 3, you should probably see a small drop, single digit, around 2 or 3%. If you get down around 4 or 5%, or any more than that by your 4th or 5th, that's about where we want the hardest workouts to be, like 555. Any more than 5%, we're looking at you're probably off and may need to kind of adjust things like Ian was saying. But more than likely, if you are in the lab and you are dialed in like you are, you're going to find that these workouts are going to be exactly where they need to be. And you'll find times where you cannot finish the workout. And actually, I started the first week of Performance Lab to be 1 week ahead of our riders to get a little bit of insight. The new workouts are amazing, you guys. I designed a handful of them. I know Ian's doing a lot of the strength, and Taya does a good amount of the workouts, but we all kind of had our hands in these coming 8 weeks, and there is a lot of climbing, a lot of low cadence, and a lot of punchiness, and it's going to fit exactly for what you need. And we're moving away and trying to make you fast for your Zwift races, but this is going to make you fast in your group ride. This is going to make you fast at your goal races. This is going to make you fast, in the bike section of your, multi-sport run. It's going to allow you to have that strength, that confidence that it's something you don't need to worry about. It's in the bag, and the fitness is going to be there.
Yeah, that's definitely a big point there. And talking about the multi-sport folks, it's also important to understand this. That same thing carries over in the swim and the run. When you get a track workout and it's maybe 8, 12, or 16 by 400 meters. The first 400 meters should actually feel pretty easy. The first few of them. I mean, they're still going to be hard. You're pushing. Don't get me wrong, but you shouldn't finish that 400 meter gassed, because if you do, you're not going to be able to hold in the last ones. And that's the important part. I actually always start my 400s. So if I'm doing, for example, 12 by 400, my first set of four 400s are all going to be probably the slowest 4 I do. And I'm not talking 5-10 seconds slower than the rest. I'm talking 2 or 3, maybe 4 seconds from slowest to fastest spread. But consistently, those will be on the slower end, because I'm A, still warming my body up a little bit, but B, trying to control myself. And I find for me, and most people have that, they have a hard time controlling themselves at the beginning of a race. So I do it at the track. I force myself to control it when I want to just blow the doors off.
It's really funny. I at the start of the 100K race, there's a neutral section. It's about maybe 2 or 3K, and I was afraid that people were just going to go out like a
Zwift race.
I was trying to think of the right word without being too mean, but yes, like a Zwift race where everyone was going to go hard, and it kind of started really kind of just mundane and normal, and then all of a sudden there were gaps. And we're still in neutral. And so I'm like, we need to kind of close up, because as soon as we make the final turn onto the actual course, everyone's just going to go crazy. So I started kind of mushing everyone. I was like, unless you want to ride alone, everybody better close the gap. We are way too far away from that group ahead of us. Everyone's got to close this before the end of the neutral. So people are like, yeah, pretty much. And so we were able to get a group together, because there was only we were in a group of 10, but there was 25 or 30 ahead of us, and maybe less than 100 meters. And I was like, get up. We are not going to ride alone. Get up. We have to get with that group ahead of us. And luckily it all kind of came together right before the start finish line. We made the turn on, and then all of a sudden everyone got really conservative. Like, we went to the first climb and I was like, this is it. And thank goodness the group we were with, it wasn't like hammerheads. And, there's some people who went off the front, but you know what? A couple, maybe 10K, 15K, we ended up catching them. But the group started thinking, and it was really low power. And I just kind of rolled with it. But it's really strategy, because you have to pick. And how far is that group ahead of you? Can you close that gap, or will the group close it for you? So it's really interesting. So just to talk about kind of blowing up and knowing what power you could be in,
Well, speaking of blowing up, let's talk a little bit about food.
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
That gives you a warm and fuzzy anytime we talk about nutrition.
It does. And this is one of the topics that I had an idea. And so what I'm going to do is actually kind of bring some of those topics that we normally have in the feed zone. We're going to bring it here into the Coach's Corner. So in particular, I wanted to highlight something called that we've talked about in the past, called nutrition in the off season. So this kind of highlights things not so much in the off season, but even on recovery weeks and even on recovery days. And so it kind of cycles in and out of kind of what you're using your nutrition for. Essentially, you want to cycle on and off in a way where you're able to fuel the workouts that you're doing. So for this week, we're not doing a whole lot of intensity. We might be doing one race or something like that. So it's really important that you're not starving yourself, but you are going to naturally eat less. What you want to do is actually make sure you focus on nutrient dense, high calorie foods. So you want to make sure you're going to those big salads with those high nutrition. Ian loves greens. When he came to California, that's all I fed him when he came here. So
as long as they were meat, that's as long
as, meat on top of the salads. So, but keeping the quality on these days, understanding that there's not going to be a whole large need of carbohydrates like there are during training, and making sure that you're looking at the nutrients that you're putting in. Because when you have back-to-back training, there's no way you can fuel every single day, day after day, with these huge, portions of, greens to get your carbohydrates. You're going to need to put starchy vegetables like potatoes, sweet potatoes for that. Sweet potatoes are great, steaming, those sort of things. And, white rice, I'm a big fan of. If you got any of the menus from Team Camp, I pretty much served, almost 5 pounds of rice in 2 days to everybody. So, I mean, I'm a big source of those sort of things when we need the carbohydrates to put in. But on the days that we're not, moving to things that have more high protein source can be very, very useful. So just kind of cycling on and off and keeping that in mind. So rest days, rest weeks, and then even in the off season, keeping those lower grams of carbohydrates per kilogram essentially, but making sure that you maintain the protein. And that's key. So think about how much you weigh in pounds or kilograms, and getting the number that you need, which is about 1 to 1 as far as pounds. So if I weigh 160, you're looking at 160 grams of protein per day, kind of very close to 0.1. So it's an easy number to kind of remember, making sure you get that in. That's important because we don't want muscle loss, because we are still doing some strength work. So keep that in mind for your off-season days, your rest days, and cycling that on and off. I'll bring the topic into the Endurance Lab for a little bit of chat here. But what I'm probably going to do is introduce a new topic for the first week, for example, of the Performance Lab. And then I'll bring it in and I'll kind of summarize and talk about it at the end of the week after we've chatted about it. So that's a new thing for the next 8 weeks. And that'll be in the feed zone inside the Coach's Corner. So Ian, what's your rest day kind of look like for food and that sort of thing?
What's a rest day, Jason?
Oh, I know. How about a day a less intense day for food? I guess
so,
would be.
So I actually do. So speaking of rest days, I have a system that I use up until actually this week. It'll change. So for the vast majority of my training, until I start getting into race specificity, I do 3 weeks. I do 20 days of training, or 3 weeks on with no rest day, and then I do a recovery week with a rest day. So basically, yeah, it's rough. And it beats me up a little bit, but I'm now switching off as I get in my race specificity. I'm going to try and take a rest day or just a swim day once a week. So on Sundays, I'll either rest or I'll just get up and swim a couple thousand and keep it fairly light. But what I do is I get up in the morning on a rest day. I drink my coffee, I relax, and then I'll eat my breakfast. And I'll admit sometimes rest day breakfast, because I have time to cook breakfast, is pancakes or waffles. But it always has fruit in it, always blueberries or something like that. So I get my antioxidants. And then, and then later on during the day, I'll have a light lunch snack. And then in the evening, since usually it's on a Sunday is my rest day, I'll grill up some chicken or pork chop, something like that, a nice lean meat, sometimes a tuna or salmon. And we'll have that usually with sweet potato of some sort and some greens in there. Sometimes lunch is a salad, but because it's a rest day, I'm not putting in a ton of calories comparatively, so I don't necessarily have a big lunch. But I do snack a little bit throughout the day with some nuts or a little bit of cheese with some turkey or something like that, just to keep kind of feeding the metabolism, but also get some good nutrients in there without having to sit down for a full meal.
Absolutely. And so kind of on the flip side, so on days that I rest, I actually use the time to do a little bit of kind of intermittent fasting, or just kind of a longer fast. So overnight, of course, let's say I worked out, day one, that night I would have slept, obviously, anywhere from 6 to 8 hours. I'd wake up, I would do coffee tea or water, probably till lunch. So that'll put me about 16 or 18 hours, depending on what's going on at the office, without food. Essentially, it gives your body a reset, allows your body to kind of just digest all the food from, let's say, the workout days, or just to let your body kind of also rest from digestion. And that's super important as you kind of get into the nitty gritty of your body and that sort of thing, to be able to recoup. And then as I do start a meal, I'll start it off with, a nice big, source of protein, as well as a good amount of greens. This is a day I could really, really pack in the vegetables on this day. And then I'll do lunch. And then I'll do a dinner, depending on if I'm going to work out the next day. I can tune it depending on more protein or less carbs. The dinner will set me up for the next day. Let's say it's another rest day, then I could easily do just protein and a lot of veg. The other thing about it is, like what Ian mentioned, those snacks of like nuts, seeds, and getting some of those like cheeses, those fat sources are very, very important during these off weeks too, because both protein and fat together will actually keep you pretty full during this time, and not have to switch off for those carbohydrates. So just another way of doing it. That's how I kind of cycle it off, on and off. A lot of my athletes do it that way, get a chance to kind of rest and digest your digestive system too. So different ways to kind of skin a cat.
I think, yeah, and it is. Everyone has a little bit difference. And I think that part of the difference is my rest day is always a day where I'm off of work. So I get a chance to sleep more, and I didn't cover that. So I'll wake up. Yeah. I'll usually go to bed on Saturday night, and I'll sleep until I wake up. No alarm, no nothing.
Nice.
And then I usually take maybe another nap later in the morning after breakfast, and maybe a nap in the afternoon. So I try to get a total of, including my night sleep, 10 to 12 hours of sleep on a rest day if I can.
Oh my gosh.
Or at least being horizontal.
Hashtag being horizontal. Oh man, if we had different people on the podcast. Hashtag Ian has no kids, and hashtag Jason is so jealous that Ian gets 10 hours of sleep. Yeah, so sleep on my rest days is kind of tough. What happens is I end up having to shut it down early at the house. I make sure I do every single chore I can as soon as my son goes to sleep, and then tell my wife that I'm going to go to sleep. Kind of tough to say. So I'll go to sleep, and then because of that, I will try to go all the way up till when my son wakes up. Luckily, my son actually sleeps pretty well. He goes to sleep around 7:30 and he wakes up at around 6:30. So there's 11-hour window. If I could sleep 11 hours every day, oh my gosh, I would have as much energy as my son. And Ian knows that he's got lots and lots of energy.
Yeah, trust me, I don't get 11 hours of sleep every day. That doesn't happen. I usually get up at 5 here, which is, I know, late for you, Jason, but get to bed. I get to sleep usually around 10. So I try to get 7 hours, but once I get going at work, it's nonstop. I eat lunch at my desk usually, which is a bad habit. No one should do it.
Yeah.
But I do it because it's the only time I can eat and get work done with no one bothering me, because they're all off eating in the cafeteria.
Doing stuff. Yeah, that doing stuff. All right. So let's transition over to On the Horizon. I know we had spent a lot of time kind of going back and forth on the Performance Lab, but let's talk a little bit about what the next 8 weeks is going to look like, and how much stronger the lab riders who pick up the Performance Lab are going to be. So let me do a quick summary, and then we'll kind of talk about the workouts. So essentially, it's going to be another 8 weeks targeted starting March 26th. People are actually starting to get their workouts now. If you haven't signed up yet, head over to endurancelab.fit. It's going to be focused on areas that really more closely aligned to your rides, your events, your races that our athletes are planning to participate in the outdoor season. So much so that the workouts are actually designed to be either done indoor or outdoor. We have taken a very conscious effort to make workouts that are available, and we've tested them to be able to do indoors or outdoors. So the training plan essentially supports athletes preparing, whether it be for centuries, for your fondos, like the 100K race that I did, criteriums, road races, really getting that next level of base fitness up and ready to go. Since we are training a lot indoors, or very exclusively in the past 8 weeks, this period will also benefit from those skills, but we'll be also taking some of those outdoors, because they will start to focus on muscular endurance and aerobic endurance, that essentially that VO2 max power up there, and really trying to kind of harness that and bring that up over the next couple weeks. So what could we expect? Now seeing kind of how it's all come together, it's kind of a thing of beauty as each of us kind of go in and kind of make our own tweaks. How do you feel like the next 8 weeks are going to go for our riders, Ian?
No, I think it's if you look at a lot of what we're doing, there's a lot of race simulation built into this, or effort workouts that mimic what you're going to do in a race. So not necessarily a race simulation, but you're going to see a lot of hard surges that go to VO2 and back and force you to clear that lactic acid and recover while still working. So an active hard active recovery to get right back into it. So your body's going to have to learn to adapt to those hard, strenuous efforts, but more importantly, recovering while at effort. And that's one of the things that this is a little different than you've probably seen in most other labs, where it's a standard zone 2 tempo, and that's long ride and a VO2 max somewhere in there of your 4. A very standard plan like this, and almost everything we do in here in this lab takes a portion of a race, and it mixes it up between the crit type rides, the road races, TTs, but every workout mimics a portion of that race. And usually it's a critical portion of it, except we have to do a few zone 2 rides. So that may mimic the neutral rollout, but everything here mimics that critical portion of that key time of a race where you need to be able to respond or attack or teach your body to recover under pressure. And that's what I think is most people are going to really benefit off of. But I will say, while we designed this so you can do a lot of this outdoors, please take a look. There's a few that I would not recommend doing outdoors. Namely ones that if you feel you don't have the road capacity as far as to not have to stop or break your tempo. But the other ones that if you believe you'll probably be seeing stars at the end of that interval or rep, like some of the VO2 reps that we're going to be doing at 140% of FTP. I personally, back before there was much training indoors, did a few of these outside. This was probably 10 years ago. And I realized it was kind of dangerous when my tunnel vision started coming in as I was just burying myself. And I realized I don't remember anything that was around me for the last minute and 30 seconds.
Yeah, it can be pretty dangerous there. And we've got some really cool weekends coming up where you could essentially stack for those that are riding kind of the Fondo Century longer rides. You can kind of stack some of the TT efforts, longer, more sustained efforts on top of tempo efforts. And the thing about it is, and what was my key kind of workouts coming up to the 100K race, because essentially it was 3 hours without a stop, like no bathroom breaks, no food breaks. I like pretty much carried everything. Well, you could pee. I don't pee on the bike. And so, but what I was saying was stacking these weekends to kind of really mimic the workout. So the weekends coming in, I was able to stack some of the Endurance Lab workouts, even from this last 8 weeks, to almost even be more intense than the almost 2.5 to 3 hours of the race. So you could really get some race specificity depending on the length. And if you have some questions about how you can stack that up, let us know. But I think you're really going to like it. And the main thing is what Ian said. You're going to learn. Gone are the days where in the middle interval, you just let off the pedal. What we're going to do is really, really put in that work. And what you're going to find is this extra layer that you're going to learn of how to recover at a tempo effort, at some effort to stay in that group and to really, really kind of use the time. So that hour to hour and 20 minutes, I think, is what's maxing out on the workouts. You're going to get such a bang for your buck on these workouts like you never had before. So I'm super excited. I'm already started the first week just so that the coaches are ahead of you guys and we can kind of answer questions for you. I know Ian's got some really great workouts planned moving forward. It's not super intense. We're going to have some of those fun ones, but everything is looking great. So Ian, we kind of wrapped up.
You did leave off one part. You mentioned something being the most important, but I actually say the most important part for everyone to understand is there is also a multi-sport add-on for this. For those who don't have a targeted try, because if you have a targeted try, that's this year, we have a short course and long course program for you.
That's right.
If you just want to keep in some multi-sport activity, we do have the multi-sport add-on for this, which is going to add additional 2 runs and 2 swims. And in the lab we can talk about what you should replace. But I try to design it where you don't have to drop off of any of the bikes if you don't need to, if you don't want to. It's probably smart to drop off 1 or 2 just for fatigue purposes. But us triathletes, we tend to be able to hold a higher TSS anyway, so it should be okay.
Right, and I guess the last thing was we also have you can get feedback, right, from one of the coaches. So you can actually do what's called a weekly performance feedback for lab athletes. It's an add-on to your normal Endurance Lab. And what it is if you're looking for personalized feedback on your performance, you essentially get assigned one of the coaches. And at the end of each week, a coach will do a quick review of your lab and the past 7 days and provide overall comments and suggestions about, in like a weekly email format, just to see how you're doing, make sure everything and touch base and that you're meeting your goals. A lot of coaches, a lot of athletes have been asking for this and have been getting some of it from the forum, from their colleagues and other riders. But really, this would be a more kind of direct connection to one of us as the coaches. Essentially, we'll be able to kind of observe and then comment on your progress throughout the lab via email. And it's really perfect for the athlete looking for some individualized coaching in that sense, or just a little bit more. But really, the golden nugget of the Endurance Lab is the community that shows accountability, that you're doing workouts, the availability of the coaches to answer questions, and really just the whole group as a whole to be able to kind of get the training done all together. So take a look at that. It's a quick add-on for your weekly. It's called Weekly Performance Feedback for the Lab Athlete. So check that out at EnduranceLab.fit. Ian, was there anything else for us on our agenda? Anything you wanted to bring up?
No, I think we got it all covered. It's going to be a fun next 8 weeks. I'm looking forward to it. No, actually, it'll be good for me because I've got about 10 weeks before I have to pack up and move. So
that's exciting.
My involvement on Zwift after 70 days from now will be a lot lower, but I'll definitely still be involved day to day in the endurance lab, and I'll be out training outside mostly since
that's awesome.
I won't have my setup.
Oh man, no, I didn't realize that. So so with that, really just wrapping up a recovery week here, and a little free ride coach's corner. Just keeping in mind some of the things, like making sure you're doing core work during the week, making sure you've got your nutrition in check, and you're keeping a conscious effort of what you're putting in, and that sort of thing during these either rest days or recovery weeks. And then just looking forward to this next 8 week in the performance lab. If you're kind of 50-50 and teetering off the performance lab, and do you really need it or do you really want it? I would say you really should kind of, if not only just, even if you don't have a goal race or ride, it's just fitness that you're going to have. You know, whether you just want to be fast for the group ride, it's going to get you where you want to go. And if you've enjoyed any of the previous labs, you're going to enjoy this one tremendously. The workouts
it's important. It's important, Jason, to understand that for these people who don't have a planned, formal race, that if you're riding alongside somebody else, you're racing.
Pretty much. That's pretty. It all comes down to being a race. So you're right, Ian. So all right.
That's my wife. That's how we do it.
That's funny. All right. So from Ian and Jason here in the Coach's Corner, we hope you had a great recovery week. And thanks for tuning in to the Coach's Corner. If you like what you're hearing here, check us out on YouTube, click subscribe, and head over to your favorite podcast app where you can search The Endurance Lab and click subscribe there as well. Other than that, we will see you next week for week 1 of the Performance Lab. Thanks, everybody.